Can you imagine declaring war on a vegetable? Well, back in the early 19th century, a writer named William Cobbett did exactly that. Today, we're going to dig into this incredibly fiery text where he attacks a surprising enemy, the humble potato, and makes this passionate case for why bread is morally and economically better in every way.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at what he called the tyranny of the potato. Then, we'll get into his case for bread. After that, why he saw baking as a moral duty. And finally, we'll walk through his guide to the path to self-sufficiency. Let's dive in.
Okay, so first up, the tyranny of the potato. Let's get to the root of the problem, shall we? I mean, why on earth did Cobbett see the simple, everyday potato as this massive threat to English society?
Yeah, he really pulls no punches, does he? Leave Ireland to her lazy root. For him, Ireland's total reliance on the potato was a huge red flag. It was a cautionary tale he desperately wanted England to avoid. This line just sets an incredibly combative tone right from the very start.
And he didn't just dislike it, he actually branded it the villainous root. I mean, think about that. This wasn't just about not liking the taste of something. For Cobbett, the potato was literally the cause of a total social breakdown, leading to what he called slovenliness, filth, misery, and slavery.
So, here are his core accusations, his big beef with the potato. He believed it degraded laborers, created slovenly and beastly habits, and got rid of the need for any kind of skill or cleanliness. All it required was endless, messy work like peeling and boiling. And the end result, in his mind, a vicious cycle of misery and poverty.
Okay, so that's the problem. What about his solution? Let's move on to his case for bread. And you know, this wasn't just him ranting. He actually makes a data-driven argument that bread is just better, superior in pretty much every single way. And here's where he gets into the numbers. Check this out. He compares what you can get from one single acre of land. Now sure, you get way more bushels of potatoes. But, and this is the kicker, that same acre of wheat gives you over 200 pounds more of actual nutritious food. Plus, wheat gives you valuable straw, while potatoes leave you with worthless haulm. For him, it was a no-brainer.
And then there's the labor. This number is just wild. 900. That is how many separate times you'd have to boil a pot to cook all those potatoes from that acre. 900. Compare that to bread, you only have to heat the oven 32 times. He practically yells at his readers, think of the labor, think of the time, think of all the peelings and scrapings and washings and messings. You can really feel his frustration.
And of course, it all comes down to the money, right? The bottom line. According to his math from 1821, if you baked your bread at home, your family could save over 6 shillings on just 1 bushel of wheat. Now, that might not sound like much to us, but for a working family back then, that was a huge deal. That was a massive saving that could really change things. And if the savings weren't enough to convince you, he throws in a little dash of suspicion. He's basically saying, hey, have you ever really thought about what's in that bread you buy from the baker? He talks about alum and, get this, ground potatoes, the very thing he's fighting against. How ironic is that? So you can see, for Cobbett, this goes way beyond just nutrition or money. It becomes a deeply moral issue. We're talking about baking as a moral duty, something that's fundamentally tied to family values, human dignity, and the happiness of the home.
So what was the single most important question a working man should ask about a woman he wants to marry? According to Cobbett, it was this. Can she bake? Seriously, not is she beautiful or is she kind, but can she bake bread? In his eyes, that one single skill was the key to the entire family's future well-being and prosperity.
And it wasn't just baking. He had a whole list of essential skills for a well-run home. A woman should know how to bake, brew, milk, make butter, and make cheese. He believed a woman who mastered these skills was, in his own words, really a skillful person, a person worthy of respect, way more important than one who was just literate or fashionable.
And man, his take on marriage was pretty blunt. Listen to this. The lover is blind, but the husband has eyes to see with. Ouch. His whole point was that looks are fleeting, but domestic competence, that's the real foundation of a happy marriage. He basically says that if a wife doesn't have these skills, her husband will inevitably grow to hold her in contempt.
So after making his passionate economic and moral case, Cobbett doesn't just leave you hanging. No, he gives you a practical, step-by-step guide. He transforms all his social commentary into an actual, actionable plan for any family to follow. This is the path to self-sufficiency. And here it is, the art of the loaf, a simple 5-step guide. You prepare your yeast, you knead the dough, which he calls the grand part of the business, you let it rise,
heat the oven, and then you bake. He lays it all out so clearly, and he presents it not as a chore, but as this really rewarding, skillful kind of labor.
And the result of all this? Wholesome food for the entire week, ready in just 3 or 4 hours. And, as he puts it, with no dirt, no filth, no rubbish. The contrast he's drawing here is so stark. This clean, efficient process is the complete opposite of the everlasting messing and slopping that he associated with preparing potatoes day after day.
And he wraps up his instructions with this beautifully romanticized image. He says you can forget all the fancy plays and royal coronations. For him, the most beautiful sight in the world is a competent woman engaged in the productive, life-sustaining act of baking for her family.
So 200 years later, Cobbett's fierce argument against Ireland's lazy root leaves us with a really big and very modern question. In our world of fast food and delivery apps, what have we gained from all this convenience? And what skills, what self-sufficiency might we have lost along the way?